We're in the middle of a hybrid crest meta takeover. I want to talk about it, but I'd be late for work. And you say, wait a minute, what do we have to stop this? We had an option, but you didn't want to ban it. Now that this is meta for the rest of the season, surprise, surprise, it ended up being broken. Oh, I just want to know what the hell to do. Probably cry. Anyways, hey there guys, Noah here. Welcome back to another Vanguard discussion video. Today, I want to talk about the meta outside of the Crest decks right now, because let's be honest, they've been taking all over the entire metagame over the past, I want to say God knows how long. And today I'm going to highlight 3 decks that have either remained pretty consistent right now, going into the rest of the BCS season, that are probably going to look even stronger once the Crest get hit, let's be honest. Or decks that are just so good that you have to just consider them into every single matchup going forward. So, I know I didn't make sense toward the end there, but regardless, let's go ahead and talk about it. I'll quickly touch up first with Katrina, mostly because it is pretty self-explanatory, right? If you're piloting this, your main combo obviously is going to, of course, be Green Katrina alongside Lilica, or even that of the Hanali, to basically make your defense insane, so that way you can continue to just continuously do Katrina. Sometimes you go into Megaloma just to survive certain matchups. Other times, you're just basically just playing the same stall game until you actually go into it. In general, this deck hasn't really changed too much, but it is still out there for you guys who are still looking for a deck that isn't Crest meta, you know, or just looking for something that isn't, like, let's be honest, if anything, they're probably going to hit this. They're going to hit Katrina in some way, shape, or form. I don't think they'll hit Katrina personally. I think they're just choice restricted with some of the problematic cards, if anything. So that's really the main thing. But in general, like, you have really good combo extension with Horticulture Elf and something like the Sylvia to make sure you have even more tokens, especially into matchups like Link Joker, which normally would be a problem for you. But because tokens get immediately removed the moment you lock them, you don't have to really worry about it. I guess the only downside to playing this deck is you do have to worry about Megacolony, which has had a massive shakeup within the past couple, weeks. And it's mostly because they're taking the Mythiarch package, right? So basically, what ends up happening is you have Mythiarch Lazui. You get to essentially check top 5 or top 7 for a unit, call it out, and then you force your opponent to discard 1 because you usually have a full board when you go into him. You also have a very consistent restander in the form of the Delphina. And this activates even when you're on your main strides, which is obviously, you know, Darkface Greydora, you know, the main problem child. I think this card should probably be banned at this point, because it's not like the Megacolony doesn't have options at this point, especially since they're also attacking in Neon Gize, right? And the reason you do this, right, is mostly because Mythiarch Lazui is Stoicheia. You have access to not only the Zoo Nation Xerath Dragon, which this list doesn't actually run, but you also have Megiddo, right? And that's really a massive difference maker in the long term. But obviously with the stipulation that you have to run Neon Gize. You don't have to ride it at any point, but you do have to run it in your main deck. Just that way you have access to the other Xerath Dragons. So honestly, it's really good. I think people sleep on this combo. But really, it is typical Megacolony fashion. You still run in Largolf, so that way you can just specifically add back the Lazui, or even, like, let's say, you know, your Antlion for when you're, like, kind of strained on resources a bit. But you, like, just having the Mythiarch package in itself is just batshit insane, because this deck already naturally hard counters a large majority of the format, and then being able to sit there and go, oh, I have, you know, 2 lines of play after my first or second Greydora turn. I either go into this bitch, or I go into this bitch. And either, oh, not this one. Where the fuck is the GB8? Oh, this person doesn't even run GB8. Oh, wow, that's funny. So yeah, sometimes you just go GB8, go for game. Like, sometimes that comes up. But in general, this deck is very strong. I think it's easily, like, the best non-Crest deck in the format. And that's even when you consider the fact this deck really, in itself, hasn't changed in a very long time. And it only just changed recently because of Lazuri, because of Mythiarch, right? So I think you're a lot less prone to bricking as well, because you don't have to run the Hell Demise, because as long as you see Delphina at any point, you're actually cooking. And then you also can search immediately for pretty much your Antlion, or even like some of the other, like your Largolf as well. So like, in a lot of cases, you'll just do Greydora first with, you know, Megalantis to minus your opponent, and then you just hard commit to Megiddo toward the end of the game. And it's very consistent with this deck, so I think the deck has definitely gotten a lot better, especially since you also have a somewhat consistent write-up for certain, you know, units that you want to go into. So it's just generally a good deck. Like, if you're testing for anything, test into this, because this is going to be a problem. I'm going to do a quick slight edit, because honestly, this deck is also very annoying. Angel Gize is still, like, one of the GOATs right now in this format, and if you're have the money to shell out $150 Gize, well then congratulations, you're practically winning the game at that point, right? Like, the card is actually fucking stupid. And one thing I want to check real quick. Oh, okay, you don't have to add it into the G-Zone. Okay, so that's a little fun little thing, I guess, is you technically, if you're playing Gize and you don't run it like as your main starter, you don't have to say that Gize is part of your G-Zone as well, so that's a little convenient. Good thing to know. I guess I can update my list later. But like, in general, this deck is really hard to stop, especially considering that you also have the purple OT, which is, I think, is just asinine. Like, a lot of people were talking about this too, because you essentially get 2 Xerath Dragon flips because of this thing. I can see a world where they just like, okay, you know what? Let's give what the people want and just hit the OT. But we're not actually going to hit the OT. We're just going to be like, yeah, good luck with that. But in general, I think it is kind of annoying how you just have insane, like, power gains. The fact that you still have access to Reverse Rush as well to stack even further is just dumb. Because that essentially means you stack your heal guards, and then you go, okay, drive check, heal trigger, drive check, over trigger, and get 2 of them thanks to the really wonky ruling on that. I think that's really dumb. I don't think that should be allowed, but here we are. But in general, very solid card. Very solid deck in general. Kind of just wanted to quickly edit this in because, honestly, this deck is really stupid. Like, you pretty much do the exact same line of play as you normally would on any given day. Sometimes you'll go into Raphael Mithra just so that way you can kind of sit there and just heal a bit. Kind of similar case for this card too, so that way you can actually have a little more survivability. But it's a lot of the times it's not necessary. Because usually by the time you have to go into those strides, you're more than ready to just go into Gize and just kill your opponent. So, like, this deck is actually really insane and very consistent. So, yeah. Kind of quick edit back to the rest of the video. And then the only other deck that's, like, a non-Crest deck right now, but is actually being a problem, is Fenrir. And it's mostly because in combination of 2 cards, right? The first, and probably the obvious big red flag, is Gelga, right? So, Gelga basically makes it so that way you have an infinite loop with certain units that you have, and it's just, the main issue with the deck is time, right? Timer stall is such a bitch, especially when you're able to, this list for some reason doesn't run it, but a lot of lists also do run the Dreaming Dragon, where essentially you're essentially, once you got into a point where you have a low deck count, you can immediately send Dreaming Dragon back and just not give a shit. Like, just the fact you can just shuffle a lot of your deck back in, just for basically no cost, is just completely asinine, right? And this is on top of, obviously, the Amaruta, which is just fucking insane. Especially the fact that you'll, in a lot of cases, go Amaruta, end of battle skill, restand one of my rear guard, the rear guard that has, like, the infinite power thanks to Gelga, and now, because probably the card is going to have a crit because of her other skill, you are essentially cooked. Like, there is no getting around that. It is just unfair. It's it's not a fun deck to go up against. So that is definitely one deck that may eventually die down a bit, but it's still good, mostly because of Melissa as well, which is another card I think. This list wasn't running it, but I definitely see a world where you could make the argument you do run it. And it's just simply because of the idea that, obviously Melissa is kind of just that really problem child that kind of sits there and goes, hi, are you an Excelled clan? What's that? You have a lot of rear guards? Okay. Activate skill, you lose, GG. Like, no one likes losing to deck out, especially in that case. especially because I'm pretty sure there's a certain way to like do that mid-battle too during your opponent's turn. So that's just really not fun. Like, anyone can sit there and tell you it is not a fun situation to be in. Jesus Christ. Like, the fact you have so much like consistency with this deck is just asinine, right? And so I don't see this deck going away anytime soon, especially if they hit Crest, but then they don't hit this for some reason. This deck becomes a problem, and it's just unfun. You don't want to play into it. There's been quite a few content creators, like I know Solemn and Derek Dow and WCC Kai. They talked about some of the stuff they would realistically hit, and a lot of that I basically agree with at this point. When it comes to the non-Crest decks in particular, obviously Gelga with, you know, Melissa, kind of bullshit. Mythiarch, I think if you hit the Megacolony package, I think you just kill Greydora. Because it's not like they don't have other strides. They have Optirantis. They have Overwhelm. You know, just having, you know, Neon Gize with Megiddo always means they have a solid kill option. So if you hit Greydora, then it's not the end of the world for this clan. And then obviously, you know, you would also have to hit Katrina. Because once you hit Greydora, Katrina becomes easily best deck in the format again, just like how it was a while back. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But, you know, Premium as a whole has been kind of a weird, like, thing. Because now at this rate, we kind of can map out what our world decks are. Because let's be honest, even once they do inevitably hit, you know, the Crest, Night Rose is still going to be a good deck. Shiranui is still going to be a good deck. If you guys want me to do a follow-up to this, to go over what I think should also be hit again, let me know. I'll do it again, but I think a lot of what people have been saying is pretty accurate at this point. I'm just beating a dead horse at that point, but I want to at least talk about at least some of the decks that I think are really good right now into this meta, and just other stuff in general. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and until next time, this is Noah, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone.